Hey, it's Drybear. Now, yesterday I put out a video going over my wish list for Season 1, which was a very targeted set of changes that I'd like to see sooner rather than later, and I intentionally left off some of the bigger ticket items that are more long-term systems that need to be implemented, things like better inventory spacing and having more options for builds and things like that. But there are a couple things in there related to damage feedback that I think need to happen really soon that I will want to provide some examples for. So today I'm going to walk through some examples of those kind of really unfortunate situations that happen in the game right now. So at least we all know what's going on and it's very clear. But first, tomorrow they're going to be going over the Season 1 changes live on the dev stream. And we're also going to be watching it live on my stream. So if you wanted to have the cliff notes, I'll be taking notes on screen, going over all the changes, the important things that you need to know. So if you're working or you're coming in and out while the dev stream is going on, you can pop by my live stream, twitch.tv/Drybear. See you there tomorrow. It is July 6th, 11 a.m. Pacific or 2 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so the first one that I want to talk about is the affix Frozen. And I don't have footage for every specific scenario in here. These are just the ones that I went through in my last few days of footage so I could find some examples of what I'm talking about. There's still a couple that I left off that we'll want to talk about in other videos if there's interest, but let's walk through these here today. So the first one is Frozen. This is a, currently I would guess a VFX problem or some kind of oversight on how the ability functions. What will happen is it spawns a small frozen chunk of ice. It spawns up from the ground, it starts spinning around, and then after about a second and a half, a decal will appear on the ground, and you will be frozen if you're in that decal when it expires. The problem with Frozen is that you're taking damage from that decal before it appears on screen. So I wanted to walk through the process of this happening in slower motion so we can see what's going on. What I've learned to do with Frozen as an affix, you can see how this ice just spawned here. This is very hard to notice, and even then, I'm already taking damage right now. Even though under my feet, around me is perfectly safe, there's nothing going on, I am already dying from this, and again, at high nightmare levels or in difficult situations, the damage is so absolutely high that if you stand in this for more than half a second, you will perish. That's just how bad it is. You can see how I'm already dying, like my HP is going down. Look how far down it already is. So right now, my HP is almost at 0. I have over the last like 10 milliseconds to 100 milliseconds, have lost almost all of my HP. There is still no visual representation for this at all. There's no indication, there's no visual feedback. I am just dying to what I affectionately call invisible damage or antimatter. So when you can see that this is going on, at this point, it has gone through my barrier, it has gone through all of my HP. We are still under a second before anything has gone by. And then by the time I realize I'm dying, I dash, but it's too late. So that is kind of the thing that I would love to see fixed about Frozen, is that either the AoE damage around the ice chunk needs to be removed to match the visual representation, or the visual representation needs to be changed to match the damage that's happening. Right now I'm dying, there's nothing under my feet, there's nothing going on. By the time the decal shows up, I'm already dead. And I think that this is kind of silly, the fact that this even exists in a game of this caliber. Something like this should never ever happen. You should always be able to see visually what is happening to your character. Whether it's doing too much damage or too little damage is a question of balance and a whole other discussion entirely. But in this case, you should never, ever, ever die to something that is not visually represented on your screen in a game of this quality. Here's, I believe, a second clip. You see that I dashed preemptively, knowing the Frozen is coming. And again, I have died before the decal. Look, the decal hasn't even appeared on my screen yet, and I have already died to this. So you can see that when that appears, so this is the first death. Let's rewatch the second one as well. You can see that I'm like preemptively moving, and I've learned to look at my HP bar instead of the ground, because the HP bar will start going down before there's any visual representation. So you can see how like in my head, I've been counting, okay, Frozen's coming up soon. I need to kind of preemptively react to this. I know the elite is at the top of the screen here, so I'm gonna start dashing to get away. I dash a little bit too early and it spawns on the other side. You can see how I dash, and right now it has spawned. I'm just dying. And I've died to something that hasn't yet appeared. There's the decal. So the decal for Frozen has now finally appeared on my screen, and it is now chilling my corpse to the bone because well, I'm already dead. Now, you can try to make an argument that the ice patch that appears, excuse me, the ice patch that appears right here, like the actual ice chunk, is visual representation. It doesn't tell you any distance of how far away it is from the center. It doesn't tell you whether or not you're standing in it. It just appears, and especially on some maps that are more bluish in tint, it is almost impossible to see. The biggest thing that you see is when the ice raises up over the ground and starts spinning and solidifies, that's when you get that damage here. But I think there's no reason why Frozen should be dealing this much damage to you when you don't have any visual representation for the damage you're taking. The next one is going to be Waller and Chilling Wind. These are deployables that spawn in sets of 3, and they will always spawn 3, even if they can only fit 1 segment inside. So this is an example of Chilling Wind. Jailer is in the same category, definitely kind of still problematic. And I think that for this specifically, I think there just needs to be a little bit more logic around how it spawns those walls and whether or not you can actually spawn enough. So what happens is you spawn 3 segments, and I think it actually works quite well, being a very threatening and imposing affix. Normally what happens if this is my character and say that Stonefriend here, the Stormbane's Wrath, I call him Stonefriend, is the elite. Jailer or Waller works great because it actually creates this little segment, kind of like One Punch Man, where they try to trap Sonic Sound and try to trap him into a little area. And it's very scary, it's very threatening, and it works great for what it does. However, there is logic right now that will always try to fit these 3 segments around your character, even if there's not room for those 3 segments, and it uses the same logic for Chilling Wind. So in this clip, you can see that I'm facing an enemy with Chilling Wind. So as I go into the corner to break line of sight for this, the Chilling Wind spawns on me, but unfortunately, because there isn't room to spawn all 3 of the Chilling Winds, it spawns them like this. So all 3 of the winds go like this, and because this is a chilling effect, I am instantly frozen the second they appear because I'm taking the chilling effect from all 3 segments simultaneously. And this is the same for Waller. The difference with Waller is that it does have collision on it, so you get some really weird situations. I've had this happen a lot where I am standing inside the wall, especially if they get overlapped. You can see even here, it didn't have room to make the full Waller, so this segment is extending outward, and it makes almost like this pi sign. And sometimes if you're in a corner, it will just literally overlap both walls on top of each other and then a wall like this. I've had like a music symbol appear on top of me, and until the Waller is over, there's no chance of escape. You are completely trapped inside of it. There's nowhere to go. You can't get out. And this can be the death of you very easily. You can see me zooming in here and questioning my life right now because that's kind of where Waller is. So I think that there should probably be some better options. You can see even here I'm stuck inside. I can't, it's trying to dash. I can't walk out. I can't back up. I can't go left. I can't go right. There's nowhere I can go because I'm inside the collision of the Waller, which obviously is not intended. It's not really what they want for Waller, but here's an example of Waller working, like it should, and then still getting stuck, right? So you have that stuck inside that. So I think fixing that problem would help a lot. And I think there also should be some logic for if it finds that it can't fit all 3 of the segments in the area it's trying to spawn them in, it should probably try to spawn 2 or 1. I get that there would be some kind of, thought around preventing abuse where players would then try to run along walls or in corners so that they get less wall spawns. But I think that there definitely needs to be some work done around the logic of these spawning, because being trapped inside a doubled wall like this and being caught in the collision, or having chilled winds spawn directly on top of you and instantly freeze you without any way to do anything about it, I think is a far bigger issue than the potential abuse that could come from any kind of logic that gets put in to prevent that. The other situation I want to talk about is electrified Obelisk. As far as I can tell, it seems like electrified Obelisk has a total distance that all the obelisks can spawn in. So the situation here, I think, is a little bit too egregious. So what's happening is, if you've never faced electrified Obelisk, it will create 5 obelisks in the shape of a pentagram if it's in open space, right? So you will be able to kind of create this kind of like 5-point thing. It creates the obelisks, and then it will draw a pentagram by having lightning zap between all of the obelisks, through the middle, back across, things like that. So you actually create this kind of whatever situation where the obelisk is dealing damage in an area. The 2 problems with electrified obelisk, I think one is that these obelisks have collision. So it actually, in some situations, because the obelisks can spawn so close together, actually ends up creating a Waller situation. I've had situations where say like in this doorway, I've had an obelisk spawn, and then an obelisk spawn, and then an obelisk spawn, and then like an obelisk spawn. And now there's actually blocking collision. Like I actually cannot walk through this because the obelisks have spawned so close together. The logic for spacing them out has completely broken, and won't have that option there. So it's pretty rough. I think there's another problem which you see with this clip here, which is for some reason, say the obelisk spawn like this, there's like 1, 2, 3, and then 4. The 5th one can spawn way away. So actually, if you can see this right now, the 5th obelisk, so all the obelisks are here in this room. The 5th obelisk is not actually even in the room right now. It's not even on screen. So if we look at this without my camera in the way, the obelisk is over here. It has spawned off screen. So now the obelisks that spawned here are off screen, and the 5th obelisk is off screen, and now my character is just taking damage from obelisks that neither of the sets of them are on screen or visible. I'm just taking damage from them. And I feel like the 5th obelisk should not be able to spawn off screen at this severe distance, because all there is just these giant lightning bolts going across the screen without any visual indication as to why they're there or what's going on. The next one is going to be Drifting Shade. I've heard a lot of people talk about Lightning Storm and Stormbane's Wrath. I actually have no issues with Stone Friend at all. I think he's a fine mechanic. You could probably lower the frequency in which he moves just to make it a little less oppressive and annoying, but I think he does a good job of applying pressure and being fair. In general, most of it kind of lines up and there's good feedback there. The issues with Lightning Storm primarily are just all bugs, where Lightning Storm Protection Zone can spawn at the top of a ladder or on the other side of a fog gate or in the different room that you're not in, and makes it impossible for you to stand underneath it, and that's going to be issues to solve. But there's another issue with Drifting Shade that I think that needs to be resolved. The first one is with the fact that the Drifting Shade will spawn after a time frame after the first one or the previous one has spawned. So you actually get situations where if you run from Drifting Shade, because the timer for the next Drifting Shade is already running, once it finally catches you, the other one has already spawned, and then you have multiple Drifting Shades going around. I feel like no matter what, you should just have that free time so that the Drifting Shade doesn't spawn until the first one has exploded, so that at least you have that. There might be a case for abuse where if you run far away, you have less Drifting Shades overall, but I feel like that's fine. That's not really a huge issue. The big issue is that you get so many on screen. The other one is a very serious problem that drives me up the wall with Drifting Shade, and that is it can actually pause. Now, this could be a networking issue where it's just laggy, but it actually will collide with your character and then troll you. So like, you see how it hits me here? It stopped, it decided whether it wanted to explode, and then it decided, nah, I don't want to. And then it'll go again. And I've had this happen 2-3 times in a row before it finally blows up. I've gone through many evades trying to deal with it. I've even run directly through it. And I've learned to let it touch me and then restart just to make sure that it explodes, because sometimes it has this troll. So I think if this is a networking issue where it can pause and not explode and then redirect, maybe that's something that just needs to be improved over time, or if this is intentional or just an oversight in the logic. I feel like there's something that needs to be done about this, because this is just, it's too much. The next one to talk about is corpse bows, and I wanted to talk about the Dread Knights from the Penitent set, as well as the Abominations from the Desert set as an option, but I think this one probably stands the most. And there's so many options, so many like very clear examples of corpse bows in this situation that I think it's very easy to focus on. To be fair, I like the concept of artillery-based mobs. I like the fact that they can outrange you and they change your gameplay, and they deal with you sitting at a safe distance. And you do have to change how you engage with them, which is part of the reason why we have various mobs in the game in the first place. The two issues that I see with corpse bow is, firstly, the fact that they can fire from off screen. I think there's a lot in the game that can actually damage you before they actually are rendered on screen or have any indication that they exist at all. And I feel like this is either at some point they had the camera zoomed out more in testing, and then they decided to zoom it in towards launch, and then there was just some leftovers that they hadn't cleaned up. But I feel like this is a very serious problem where you can just take damage from things that, as far as you know, don't exist. So this is probably not the best example, since I am in combat here. There's definitely situations where you walk into a crossbow or a corpse bow and you die from it off screen here. The other issue, and the thing that I think is the most pressing for corpse bows, is that I don't think they should be armed and ready to fire. before the player has actually seen them or encountered them. So when you run into corpse bows sometimes, or they spawn during an encounter, they will actually spawn like laid out on the ground. And then when you encounter them, they will then kind of collect themselves, they have this kind of get up animation where they put themselves together, they stand up, they arm the bow, they place down and plant, and then they become stable, and then they turn and they shoot at you. And I think this is awesome. This is excellent feedback. You know that the corpse bow is there. You can see that they're preparing to fire. All of that is working really well, and you have this kind of like, okay, I know the threat of the corpse bow. They do a lot of damage. They can one-shot me if I'm not careful. I got to work my way around that. But I think what's happening is, I've had this happen many times, and I'm sure you have too, where on the map, somewhere way off the map, so like this is my viewable area, let's say, if this was the map, and then like there's these, this excess area of like preloaded stuff that's playing sounds and stuff like that. I've had corpse bows outside of this, like 3 rooms over, already stood up, already primed and ready to fire, and then when you open a door or you walk within sort of distance of them, they fire and they one-shot you. You had no visual representation. You had no audio representation. There's no feedback at all. You just died to something that's off screen. And I think that this either is a bug where they're just loading in sooner than they should, or something needs to change about how they decide to arm themselves. I think if they're going to have this, maybe they need to have, like the Butcher has chain sounds and clanking sounds when he's way off screen most of the time. Something like that could work, where you know that they're there. Like, you kind of know the Butcher's nearby before you even encounter him. And I think if corpse bows are going to be this dangerous from this far away, from off screen, they need the same kind of treatment, or they should not be able to arm themselves and stand up until the player sees them, or there needs to be something done around that, because I think anytime you die to damage that has no feedback for you at all is never a good experience for the player. And the last one of the footage that I've gathered quickly here, just kind of give some examples here, is that you can actually crowd control a blood blister, which means that it stops giving visual feedback for explosion. This one isn't too bad because at least it has an icon on the mini map, and you know it's there because it's part of the affixes. But you can freeze and in some cases stun the blood blisters, which will apply the CC. It doesn't stop the timer. So you can see the blood blister just spawned. I hear it, which is good. I can turn around to react to it, and I have cold mages, which means that when it spawned, I froze the blood blister. So it will stop, actually, when it gets frozen, it'll stop playing any buildup sounds. It's completely silent, nothing happens. And then sometimes it'll grow bigger in one single step, and sometimes it won't. So like in this frozen state, you see it's not animating, it's making no sound, there's no feedback at all, and I know it's about to explode, and then it does, and then it kills me. So I think that in general, this happens if you have like a lot of AoE. I'm sure Ice Shard Sorks or Blizzard Sorks or Frozen Orb Sorks have this same problem where they CC the blood blister and then they don't know that it's going off because it's in the big pack of AoE, and that becomes a happen. So this might just be a bug or an oversight, but something like this is in that category of player feedback that should be improved, so that especially on these higher difficulties that you're able to react and have good information coming into you as the player. And that's what I've got for you today. It's not an exhaustive list of all the things, but I wanted to kind of at least highlight this issue of lack of feedback for damage, because I think that it's an ongoing thing, and I would love to not have to put up with this any longer than we have so far for going into season 1 and beyond, especially as we push higher and higher in difficult content. So this is what I'm talking about when I say that there is missing or poor player feedback for damage or for affixes that are in there. And I'm sure that these are things that you've already encountered and have, belabored over much hours in the night, wondering why it is that you're dying or having these effects happen to you. So I wanted to have some examples at least to show that up. We're going to have the dev stream tomorrow, 11 a.m., 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, on my channel and on the Diablo channel. So if you're looking for notes, we'll be doing that live as well. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.